I'll get the ball rolling, Zen, if
Sure.
that's okay. Well, first of all, I mean, one of the conversations we have had with you folks, including when Minister Sikorski was in Manila, was how the Philippines and Poland are emerging as these very important middle powers, middle power diplomacy, if not frontline states, playing very important role in mediating relations among the superpowers or tensions between the superpowers. What is your take on this issue?
Well, I don't think we see each other as ourselves as mediators between superpowers because that's slightly presumptuous, I would say. We are a relatively significant country in Europe. In the EU, we are the fifth biggest country. We have a strong economy. Something which not very many people probably realize in Asia, that in 1990 we were bankrupt,
Yep.
completely bankrupt, with huge debts inherited from the communist government. And since 1990, since the financial economic transformation, until now, we've never been in a recession. Never been in a recession.
Even
In
during the
2001,
2008.
the 2001, when the dot-com crisis,
Right.
and 2007, 2009, we were close to zero, but above. We never went under. And average growth 5% a year in the last 35 years. So we have emerged, and we are now classified, depending of how you look at it, as 20th or 21st. So we are on the verge of G20. So giving the dollar is quite cheap, when actually latest figure was that we're G19. But we'll see. We'll see. But we are definitely getting into that crowd. So we are not. So we are relatively significant, but let's put things in perspective. We are not mediating between the superpowers, because I think this is not quite. We're not quite there. But yes, we are a very important part of the EU. We play a big role in the EU. We are the fastest growing in the EU in terms of GDP growth, 3.2% this year.
Right.
We've got very low unemployment, and we play a role, and especially, of course, in NATO, where out of 32 countries, we are the fifth largest spender on military in real terms. In other words, in real money.
Right.
Fifth largest. We've got third largest army after US and Turkey in NATO. And in terms of GDP spent, percent of GDP spent on the military, we are the number one with 4.7%. And we are going to keep above 5% for the foreseeable future. So yes, we are a player in that sense. Given that we are bordering on a country at war, Ukraine, which had been invaded 3.5 years ago by Russia, we see no other way but to strengthen both the economy and the military. And the economy also a part which are kind of dual use. So we invest a lot in infrastructure, in roads, in rails, because that can be used for both military and civilian.
Right.
So benefits the civilian, but in case it has the war in Ukraine would not be possible. I mean, Ukraine would have lost it very fast, but for the fact that in southeast of Poland, there is a fantastic road network, rail network, including rails going straight to Ukraine, to Kiev, and a phenomenal airport which can take any plane that exists.
That's the supply line.
And it's and 95% of everything that goes to Ukraine goes via that airport and these rails.
Right.
So without that, it would not. The war, which is lasting over 3 years, is now in a phase where without logistics you cannot run it, and we provide the logistics.
Right.
So our goal is to provide that role in case of any future potential conflict with the Russian Federation.
Okay. So that's quite impressive. Actually, you tackled a lot of things there, but let me just make some quick follow-ups, a little to discuss each of those. With regard to the economic resilience, what could be the secret to that?
Well, I think we went through hell under communism, which wrecked everything. But there's one thing we retained: the communists, even under Stalin, could not completely destroy private enterprise. We still had private enterprise, oppressed but existing, and private agriculture. We were the only country in communist bloc which had private agriculture. And Stalin, who knew that Poles were somewhat different from other nations that he occupied, made a comment that installing communism in Poland is like putting a saddle on a cow. We did not quite fit.
Yeah.
It is not very good
yeah.
fit.
Yes.
So we survived the German Nazi occupation. We survived the Soviet, different style, but occupation control. And the people were very much individualistic, self-reliant. And to this very day, 60% of our GDP is produced by small and medium-sized enterprises, very often family-owned. So people rely on their families and their friends and not on the government.
Right.
So this is how we managed to survive. So I remember why we survived 2007, 2009 is because we had the entrepreneurs and private businesses were very severely hit by the dot-com bubble in 2001. And they've realized that they have to prepare, and they adjusted. And they managed to deal with that. And so it's a private sector which is booming and keeping us afloat. So that is why, and very entrepreneurial. I mean, very creative, because in order to fight with very big and obnoxious bureaucracy, they needed to be willing to able to first bypass the communists, first bypass the German Nazis, then bypass the communists, and then bypass the bureaucracy, and figure out how to do things in a creative way to live. So it's I think we've got fair degree of creativity. So if I would say, or if I was asked to, what are the two factors which are the key in a Polish society? Firstly, it's a love of freedom. We simply will not be enslaved. That's why Russians will not, if the Russians cross the border, there will be a war and we will not surrender. We will rather die than surrender. So that's one thing. And secondly, solidarity. People actually, it's not maybe every day you don't see it, but something happens like the huge influx of Ukrainians. 6.5 million Ukrainians crossed the border when the war started. And as 1 million still stayed here, and they are fully integrated. They all have social security numbers, health insurance, access to work permits, and all work. I mean, the most of this 1 million work, and like 80-something%, which means they are integrated because people don't like others living on social security. But if these people work, that means they pay taxes that are completely acceptable. We have the same with smaller, older community. We have probably about 100,000, maybe slightly less, but it's hard to say, Vietnamese who are completely integrated here. They're a completely different culture, of course, but they're integrated. They speak Polish, they work, and that's why you have lots of places you can get Asian food stores because they
did see
Not enough Filipinos, maybe.
Not enough Filipinos.
not definitely, but yes, but so.
But we did see Indonesian.
So not so much in it, but this is. But we integrated in 2002 when Putin started a war, second war with Chechnya, and we get 80,000 Chechens here, and they're Muslims and they're men, and they got integrated. Some went to Germany, but some of them stay here, and they're okay. So it's not that we actually welcome genuine war refugees. We do not particularly like economic migrants. That's a different story.
I want to ask about how the domestic politics and the international policy, they kind of converge, because I've been in different capitals. You can talk about France, different countries. There seems to be some divergence of opinion on how their country should position vis-a-vis Russia, US, China, among others. But here in Poland, there seems to be some sort of a bipartisan consensus on how to move forward. Am I correct? And if ever that's the case, why do you think there is that significant degree of bipartisan consensus, considering, as anyone who has followed Polish politics, you quite have a polarized domestic political landscape, to put it mildly?
We've got very polarized domestic landscape, but we have come out. It goes back to communism. We left the communist system partially in 1989, completely in 1990, and there was one thing which all political forces agreed on, irrespective if they were very socialist or quite nationalistic or conservative. I wouldn't say right wing necessarily, but conservative or liberal Democrats or social Democrats. We all wanted to become members of the NATO alliance. So irrespective who ran the country, very right wing prime minister or quite social democratic minister, prime minister, whoever was the president, right. We said joining NATO is #1 priority, which we did. And I could list you a number of prime ministers from quite right to quite left, ex-communists as well, and all wanted to join NATO. The second thing is, which was completely agreed with the huge masses, was to join the European Union.
Right.
Which we did in 2004. That was maybe not 100% agreement, but was substantial. Because there were fears about, for instance, the peasants, the farmers were fear that is going to ruin our infrastructure. Farmers were the biggest beneficiaries of joining the EU, and none of them would like to quit now because they were hugely
subsidies.
Yes, and also they modernized the agriculture. So we are very keen on that. But we joined the EU also thanks to strong support of the Catholic Church hierarchy, right. Which says this is our way. And the Church plays always a very substantial role in Poland. We've been a Catholic country since 966. So we did listen, and we had a Polish Pope at the time, and so we joined the EU. So there was this unanimity in terms of security and foreign policy. We spoke with one voice, although we bitterly fought about domestic issues. Then and now. And now, when the war started, we didn't start it, the Russians invaded Ukraine in 2022. I was in opposition. I was a member of parliament in opposition. And before the war started, the government invited representatives of various opposition parties for talks, showing us the situation, because the government had access to information coming from our allies. And we knew already by October, November 2021, we knew the war was going to happen. Because we were given.
So you believe the American intelligence? Because I remember I was
not only American, but yes,
multiple sources.
We had other sources as well.
But
I
was in the Munich Syria conference just days before it happened, and it looks like some of the Germans, if not the others, were very skeptical of the U.S. intelligence. They called it.
We actually believed the U.S. intelligence and the British intelligence, rather, which we got, because there was a good reason to. We have our own analysts. We have think tanks in Poland, which are very competent. Looking at the Eastern situation. We have a couple of think tanks. One of them is run by the Foreign Ministry, but it's independent. I mean, independent, but we finance it. And another was the Eastern, dealing with the Eastern studies, and they were both saying the same thing. And we did get some stuff from the Americans. And as far as the Germans are concerned, this is a sorry saga. When the war started, the head of BND, the German intelligence service, was in Kiev because he didn't believe the war was going to start. So we had to send special forces to rescue him, to rescue him from there.
was
which was
crazy.
quite amusing. But because we did it, we knew it was, and moreover, we knew, and what I'm talking about is because I was a member of the opposition, and I was invited, well, my party was invited, I was delegated. To go to meetings with the Prime Minister, with the Chief of General Staff, and with other people,
briefing.
and each other bit for intelligence briefing. So we were aware. And from that moment, we said to the government, we'll fully support you,
Right.
whatever you're going to do. So we voted for creating a barrier on the border with Belarus. We voted for increasing the number of armed forces. We voted for increasing the budget for armed forces. And we said this is not a party issue, it's a state issue, and we have to support the government. Comes October 2023, it's a new election. We got elected. The government, previous government, is in opposition. They vote with us on the same issues because this is not a party politics.
It's a national interest.
It's a national interest issue. So yes, so we increased spending to 4.7% of GDP on defense. We are going to have 300,000 people in the army. We made orders in America alone for $60 billion for arms. And then South Korea as well, and we're buying tanks and artillery. And the government is supported by the opposition. So yes, it's a bipartisan because it's an existential threat to us. As I said, we will not be occupied by the Russians.
All right. So, of course, we are an Indo-Pacific nation, and earlier we discussed on the Indo-Pacific strategy of Poland. So I'll cut to the chase. What is the key Polish interest in our region, given the fact that you also have, I think it's in my question, a war closer to home that you need to manage as well?
And can I connect something to that? Is like also your defense industry, right? You have developed a very robust defense industry. A lot of our Black Hawk helicopters come from you guys. What is the lesson from a mid-sized country in terms of developing its own indigenous defense capability? Because that's something we're really focused on in the Philippines nowadays.
Well, it's essential to have your own defense capabilities, and the way we approach it is there are certain things we won't be able to produce. Let's be honest. You can't produce a nuclear submarine,
or fighter jet engines,
or the fighter jets of the 5th generation or the 6th generation. You cannot do that.
Yes.
You also have a problem with some anti-missile defenses. And a few other things. But there are lots of things you can do. So our goal was from the very beginning, for some years now, we're saying we are going to purchase arms and weapons from various countries, largely the US and South Korea, but not exclusively. We also try to find where we can buy something that is available. Some countries, because of this peace dividend since 1991, don't produce anything. So that's a problem. That's a European problem, for instance. But our aim is of every $100 spent, 50 should be spent in Poland. Yeah. In other words, we have to produce. So now we are talking to the Americans to do a joint venture on production of arms in Poland. This is our talks with the Americans. With the Koreans, we are saying, yes, we want to produce K2 tanks in Poland. We've already made some modifications, and we already have some orders for these modified tanks, because sometimes a small adjustment makes a big difference. So this is what we are aiming at. Yes, we'll buy, but we also have to co-produce it here.
Tech transfer.
So tech transfer, yes, so that we can produce something. And of course, we are now building a number of factories producing 155 millimeter artillery shells with our Slovak friends. So we are not against co-production, but we want to have it here, so we have control over it. And this is something which medium-sized countries and the Philippines should also think about, because you cannot be completely reliant on somebody. You have to try to develop your own industry, with the exception, with the understanding that some things you will have to buy. But we have decided, and this is something which I communicated to our Chinese friends who were very surprised that we would try to follow the Chinese route. That is, we produce in Europe everything that we need.
Self-sufficiency.
And self-sufficiency, because we've got enough people, 450 or 460 million citizens. We have enough money. I mean, Europe is not a poor continent, and so we can. So one of the things we said, we have to reindustrialize.
Right.
Because we let it go, and it's very nice to sell services, but services can't defend you, but you have to produce things. So
But that's where the state is important. I mean, you emphasize private sector, private entrepreneurship, but you need industrial policy, right?
yes, and I'm not saying that we should abolish the state, but private enterprises are much more nimble. You know how long it takes to make an order for some procurement for weapons in the United States? 7 years. 7 years. I mean, you cannot wait 7 years if you have a war.
Right.
So we have to change the way the system works, and this is what we are planning to do with our European friends. We basically decided to, and this is a big. It was a theme of our EU presidency: security, Europe, and security meaning military security, which means also rearming. Meaning building factories in which you produce weapons, because at the moment, why did people ask sometimes, why did you order the K2 tanks from South Korea instead of buying Leopard 2 from Germany? And the reason is very simple. In 2021, when we wanted to buy tanks, the first Leopard from Germany could reach Poland in 2027.
Too slow.
And because they did not have, Rheinmetall did not have capacity to produce, because they said we don't do anything anymore because we have no wars, we have peace. And the Koreans, who have neighbors, decided that we cannot rely on that.
But how does EU security relate to Asia-Pacific security?
Very much so, because if you look at the war, I can assure you that's how we think. Should Ukraine have fallen in 3 weeks, which Putin said it would, I can assure you that the Taiwan Strait would not be in a very healthy shape. And the expansion in the South Pacific would be quite quick. As it is, people start thinking, maybe it's not so easy, maybe it's not cost-free, maybe it's not going to be fast. So we are saying, if you show, why is it important? Because in the Rammstein format, which is the military aid to Ukraine, Rammstein is pure military. There are 52 members, 53 states and some organization, which shows that all of a sudden, what we are getting now is an AWACS equivalent in a surveillance plane, which is getting to us from Australia. So Australia has no business, military interest in Poland. And yet they are supplying us with this because they think we are closer than it looks. We talk to people in Southeast Asia about their worries. Who is very much involved in these matters? Japan. They're quite far away from the conflict, but they think about it in these terms. If you let go and show that you can change borders by force, and the territorial integrity is irrelevant, it becomes irrelevant in other places. If you can do it here, you can do it elsewhere. And the fact, says the president, and the fact that the people are saying, no, we don't accept it, and that is the same way which we say, no, we do not accept changes in the law of the sea in Southeast Asia. No, we do not accept 9 lines which belong to one state and not the others. No, we do not accept people taking over various islands saying that these are theirs. No, we don't accept any limitations on the sea traffic through, for instance, Taiwan Strait or anywhere else. because it's not
Right.
it is against the international law, and we will not accept it. And we always communicate that to relevant parties.
July 12 is the 9th year anniversary of the arbitral award won by the Philippines. Can you say that on record if Poland supports that and believes in it?
And why is it?
And why?
Poland completely supports the ruling of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and any measures to promote peace and stability in the South China Sea, including dispute settlement mechanisms provided by UNCLOS or UN clause. It's absolutely Poland is 100% for multilateral solutions based on the rule of international law, which started with the UN Charter in 1945. We will not part from that. This is a basis for all dispute resolutions. Therefore, we do support. We approve of the ruling. We accept the ruling, and we firmly believe it should be implemented.
Right. Now, my next question would be what kind of support is Poland willing to give to the Philippines in the fight for the enforcement of the arbitral award or the international law? Given the fact that they're already given the fact that they're already spending for protecting your borders here with regard to the Ukraine and Russia war.
Can I connect that to the bigger thing, which is you see this nexus of North Korea, China supporting Russia, China reportedly saying that to Europeans that they're not going to allow Russia to lose. So we clearly see that some sort of axis is emerging. Do you think naturally it makes sense for NATO to work with special non-NATO major allied countries like the Philippines to kind of keep that axis in check? Because we are seeing this broader Eurasian geopolitical contestation.
Well, a number of NATO countries are very active, cooperating with South Asian nations, and we are open in criticizing Chinese support for Russia, both political support and support by supplying dual-use materials, of which about 80% we estimate of these materials go from China. We mentioned that to our Chinese partners, that this is, they deny it, but we keep mentioning it, that we do not accept that, because we are aware of the role China plays there, and we are aware of North Korea's role, because they've got soldiers in Russia, near Kursk region and some. So we are fully aware of that, and we are against it. And in terms of the Philippines, we can only do that by two things. First, using diplomacy in an international setting to saying no, we don't accept this, or whatever the international law says. We back it, we obey it, and therefore we support the Philippines. And also by growing the cooperation in security and defense, which we are doing with not only with South Korea but with Japan and with Australia and we were perfectly happy to do that with the Philippines. We're perfectly happy to have a working military working group exchanging views and on security and on cybersecurity. We have a unfortunate pleasure to be number one in the EU target for cyber attacks.
Right.
Of all 27 countries, we are number one.
Why is it so?
I think because we are very strongly anti-Russian policy. So we are attacked largely by Russians and Belarusians.
In the same way that the Philippines is the subject of a lot of Chinese cyber attacks.
Well, so yeah, so that's why we've spent lots of money and effort to develop our cyber, and it's actually in both civilian and military. And I would say, and we are considered by the Americans to be at the top end.
Right.
In that.
So is this an indication that Poland is interested in getting into an official defense agreement, just like the Philippines and New Zealand, Japan,
Reciprocal access
the
agreements.
recent
things like
agreements that we entered
I
into?
think we'll be perfectly prepared to look into that. I'm not in charge of military
That's the
matters.
defense ministry.
But it's a defense
Yes, yes.
ministry.
That's
It's a
his job,
defense
yeah.
ministry. It's
Yeah.
not my job, but yes. But we are interested in increasing security, including energy security, including cybersecurity, including
Because now
military
there's
security.
a blurring of these priorities. You know, it's actually working together between the foreign affairs now and the defense. That's how it is in the Philippines. All these defense cooperations are now getting into the foreign affairs and diplomatic realm. So
We have
you are aware
we-
that there is an interest there.
Yes, and
Minister.
we have with some countries we have either existing or planning the quadriga meetings, which means respective ministers of defense and foreign affairs
Right.
From two countries
2+2,
meeting,
yeah.
2+2 meeting together,
Multilateral.
because we see the security issues, the defense issues, and foreign affairs issues very much linked in the current climate. So yes, we are prepared to look at that with various countries. I cannot make comments for my boss, for the defense minister, because he's my party boss. He's the leader of my party.
Right. But how do you deal with relationships with China? I mean, the EU is still trading, with China. There's a huge Chinese investment here in this region, and yet you are opposing certain actions by China. How do you manage
Well,
that?
it's always a matter. It's a matter of that we cooperate when we can, and we criticize issue, and we certainly oppose some other issues. With China, we've got bilateral contacts, EU contacts, and contacts via multilateral bodies. It's very complicated. In terms of, we are not very engaged with Chinese and international regional initiatives. Yes, we are part of the 14+1, because it's now 14+1,
Yes.
but we